The dust swirled red around Sarah's boots as she pressed her back against the rough wood of the stagecoach station. 3 men were closing in, and her father's revolver felt like it weighed 100 pounds in her trembling hands. This was 1875 in the Washington Territory, and Sarah Locke was about to learn that survival out here meant more than just knowing how to shoot. "Look at this one, boys," the tallest man drawled, his yellow teeth gleaming beneath a scraggly mustache. "Thinks she's some kind of gunslinger." Sarah raised the Colt higher, trying to keep it steady. "I know how to use this," she warned. "My father taught me well." But here's what she didn't know yet. These weren't random drifters looking for trouble. They worked for a man who wanted her dead before she even knew why. And the cowboy about to save her life? He was hiding secrets of his own. The shortest man laughed, a nasty scar crossing his forehead. "Maybe your daddy should have taught you not to travel alone in these parts." Sarah's finger tensed on the trigger. She'd only ever fired at targets, never at a person. The hesitation would cost her everything if she didn't act fast. "Now, darling," said the third man, his voice deceptively gentle. "Why don't you put that gun down before you hurt yourself?" There was nowhere to run. The station manager had conveniently disappeared to fetch supplies, leaving her utterly alone. Sarah glanced desperately toward the road, praying for help that wasn't coming. Then the tall one lunged. Sarah fired. The shot went wide. The recoil was stronger than she'd anticipated. Before she could recover, the scarred man grabbed for the gun. Sarah twisted away, kicking at his shin with everything she had. He howled but didn't let go. She fought like a wildcat, clawing, kicking, thrashing. But 3 against 1 meant she was losing ground fast. Her bonnet tore away, sending her chestnut hair tumbling around her shoulders. Tears of frustration burned in her eyes, but she refused to give up. That's when the second gunshot cracked through the air. But this one didn't come from Sarah's revolver. "I'd suggest you gentlemen step away from the lady." The voice was deep, steady, and carried an undercurrent of steel that made even the scarred man freeze. Sarah's gaze shot toward its source. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the setting sun, rifle aimed directly at her attackers. "This ain't your business, mister," the tall assailant growled. "I'm making it my business." The stranger stepped forward, revealing a lean, muscular frame and a face weathered by sun and wind. Dark blonde hair fell in waves beneath a worn Stetson, and his blue eyes held an intensity that made even the scarred man take a step back. "Now I won't ask again. Let the lady go." The moment stretched taut as a bowstring. Then slowly the tall man released Sarah's arm. She immediately stumbled away, retrieving her dropped revolver and backing toward the newcomer. "You're outnumbered," the gentle-voiced attacker pointed out, reaching for the knife at his belt. The stranger's mouth curved into a dangerous smile. "I like those odds better than the lady did." Here's what Sarah didn't know yet. This cowboy had been tracking these men for weeks. He knew exactly who sent them and why. But if he told her the truth right now, she'd never trust him. So he kept his secrets and saved her life instead. "You boys have 2 choices," the cowboy said calmly. "You can turn around, mount up, and ride out of here, or you can try your luck. And I promise at least one of you won't live to regret it." The 3 men exchanged glances. Finally, the tall one spat into the dust. "Come on, boys. This piece of calico ain't worth dying over." They backed away slowly, mounting their horses with dark glances over their shoulders. Only when they were specks on the horizon did the cowboy lower his rifle. He turned to Sarah, concern evident in his blue eyes. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" Sarah realized she was trembling. "No, just shaken." She straightened her shoulders, determined not to appear completely helpless. "Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Archer. Adam Archer." He touched the brim of his hat. "Sarah Locke." Adam's eyebrows rose at the name. though Sarah was too rattled to notice. "You wouldn't happen to be Samuel Locke's niece, would you? You knew my uncle. Everyone in Kennewick knew Sam Locke. Good man. I'm sorry for your loss." What Adam didn't say, he'd been riding past that station for 3 days, waiting for her arrival. He'd known those men would be there. He'd known Sarah was walking into a trap. And he'd known that if he didn't intervene, she'd end up just like her uncle, dead in a way that looked like an accident. "That property is about 3 miles from my place," Adam said, watching her carefully. Sarah wasn't sure how to respond, so she changed the subject. "The stagecoach continued without me, because I'm waiting for my trunk to arrive tomorrow. Ma'am, I don't mean to alarm you further, but those men might circle back once they think I've moved on. I'd feel better if you weren't alone here." Under normal circumstances, Sarah would never consider leaving with a stranger. But these weren't normal circumstances. "I can take you to Widow Cooper's boarding house in Kennewick," Adam offered. "It's respectable, and she can send someone back for your trunk tomorrow." Something in his tone made Sarah meet his gaze directly. There was compassion there, and respect, but no pity. It was refreshing. "Very well, Mr. Archer. I accept your offer." 10 minutes later, Sarah was settled on Adam's horse, her valise secured behind the saddle. Adam swung up behind her, maintaining a respectful distance while still providing support. As they set off toward Kennewick, the setting sun painting the landscape in gold and crimson, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how quickly everything had changed. Just hours ago, she'd been a teacher from Philadelphia, heading west to claim an inheritance. Now she was riding into unknown territory with a stranger who'd saved her life. "Miss Locke." "Yes, Mr. Archer." "You're quite the fighter, but from now on, you'll never have to fight alone again. Not in Kennewick." It was a simple statement, not a promise or declaration. Yet something about the certainty in his voice made Sarah believe him. What she didn't know was that Adam Archer had made this same promise to her uncle 3 months ago, right before Samuel Locke died under mysterious circumstances. And Adam had every intention of keeping it, even if it meant going to war with the most dangerous man in the territory. The ride to Kennewick took longer than expected. Darkness fell quickly, and Adam kept their pace steady rather than pushing the horse too hard. Sarah found herself leaning back into his warmth, despite her best efforts to maintain propriety. "See those lights ahead," Adam said. "That's Kennewick." Relief washed over Sarah. The memory of her attackers remained fresh, making every shadow seem threatening. "Is Kennewick a large town?" "Not particularly, but it's growing. We've got a general store, 2 saloons, a hotel, the boarding house where you'll be staying, a church, a doctor, and as of last month, a proper sheriff's office." "That sounds quite civilized." Adam chuckled. "Don't worry, Miss Locke. It's still wild enough to keep things interesting." As they entered town, Sarah observed the wooden buildings lining the wide main street. Despite the late hour, several establishments were still illuminated, and the sounds of a piano and raucous laughter drifted from one of the saloons. Adam guided his horse toward a 2-story clapboard house set slightly back from the main street. A sign reading Cooper's boarding house hung from the porch eave. "Mrs. Cooper keeps respectable hours," Adam said as he dismounted. "But she always leaves a lamp burning for late arrivals." He reached up to help Sarah down, his hands firm around her waist as he lifted her effortlessly to the ground. Before Sarah could smooth her rumpled dress, the front door opened. A plump, gray-haired woman stood framed in the doorway. "Adam Archer, is that you skulking around my porch at this hour?" "Evening, Mrs. Cooper. Sorry to disturb you, but I've brought a guest who needs lodging. This is Miss Sarah Locke, Samuel Locke's niece from Philadelphia. She had some trouble at the stagecoach station." Mrs. Cooper's expression changed instantly to concern. "Goodness gracious. Come in, child." She hurried down the steps and took Sarah's arm. "You poor dear. You must be exhausted and frightened half to death." "I'm quite all right, thanks to Mr. Archer," Sarah assured her. Mrs. Cooper looked back at Adam. "And what exactly was this trouble at the station?" Adam's expression darkened. "Three of Blackstone's men. They were bothering Miss Locke when I happened upon them." Mrs. Cooper's lips pressed into a thin line. "That man's getting bolder by the day." She tightened her grip on Sarah's arm protectively. "Well, you're safe now, Miss Locke." Adam followed them into a cozy parlor. He set Sarah's valise down and cleared his throat. "I'll be heading to the sheriff's office to report the incident, Miss Locke. Sheriff Daniels will likely want to speak with you tomorrow if that's agreeable." "Of course, and thank you again, Mr. Archer." A shadow crossed his face. "I'm just glad I was passing by." What Adam didn't say, he hadn't been passing by at all. He'd been waiting for her, knowing exactly when she'd arrive and exactly what Blackstone's men would try to do. Because 3 months ago, he'd watched Samuel Locke die in his arms, whispering with his last breath, "Protect Sarah. Don't let them take the land. Don't let them win." "Rest well, Miss Locke," Adam said, settling his hat back on his head. "I'll call on you tomorrow afternoon, if that's acceptable. We can discuss your uncle's property." "That would be most helpful. Thank you." With a tip of his hat, Adam departed, leaving Sarah to Mrs. Cooper's fussing. The older woman insisted she sit by the fire while she fetched a bowl of stew. Left alone momentarily, Sarah sank into a comfortable armchair, the events of the day catching up to her. The attack, Adam's timely rescue, the ride to Kennewick, it all seemed surreal. She'd come west to claim her inheritance, expecting challenges certainly, but nothing like this. Uncle Samuel's letters had painted Kennewick as a growing, prosperous town with opportunity. He'd never mentioned men like Blackstone, or the dangers a woman alone might face. Mrs. Cooper returned with steaming stew and thick bread. "Eat up, dear. You'll feel stronger with something in your stomach." Sarah hadn't realized how hungry she was until the aroma reached her. She ate gratefully while Mrs. Cooper prepared a room upstairs. "Your Mr. Archer is a good man," Mrs. Cooper remarked when she returned. "One of the best in Kennewick, though he keeps to himself mostly." "He's hardly my Mr. Archer," Sarah corrected gently, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. Mrs. Cooper smiled knowingly. "Perhaps not yet, dear. But I've known Adam Archer for 5 years now, and I've never seen him look at a woman the way he looked at you." Before Sarah could protest further, Mrs. Cooper continued. "Now tell me about yourself, Miss Locke." Sarah explained her situation, how she'd been working as a teacher in Philadelphia when news of her uncle's death reached her. With both parents gone and her younger brother recently married, there had been little to keep her in the East. Uncle Samuel's bequest of his property had seemed like Providence offering a new direction. "I've always been drawn to the West," Sarah admitted. "The freedom, the opportunity." Mrs. Cooper nodded approvingly. "You seem to have the spirit needed to thrive here." She patted Sarah's hand. "And now you should get some rest. You've had quite enough excitement for one day." Sarah followed Mrs. Cooper upstairs to a small but comfortable room with a brass bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. A colorful quilt adorned the bed, and curtains framed the window overlooking the main street. "Sleep well, Miss Locke. You're safe here." When Mrs. Cooper had gone, Sarah sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. Today's events had been a stark reminder of just how unprepared she really was for frontier life. And yet there was Adam Archer, appearing like some hero just when she needed him most. His words echoed in her mind. "You'll never have to fight alone again." It was a lovely sentiment, but Sarah knew better than to rely on others for her security. Tomorrow she would thank him properly, then politely establish the boundaries necessary for a single woman in her position. With that resolution firmly in mind, Sarah prepared for bed, but as she drifted towards sleep, her thoughts kept returning to a pair of intense blue eyes that had looked at her with such unexpected admiration. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that Adam Archer was at that very moment sitting in the sheriff's office, looking at a map of the territory with grim determination. "She's here," Adam said quietly. "Sarah Locke is in Kennewick." Sheriff Daniels leaned back in his chair. "And Blackstone already made his move." "3 men at the station. I ran them off, but they'll be back. He's not going to stop." "Did you tell her about the coal?" Adam shook his head. "Not yet. She needs to trust me first. If I come at her with the whole story right away, she'll think I'm just another man trying to use her." The sheriff studied him carefully. "You care about her already, don't you? And you haven't even really met her." Adam didn't answer, but the truth was written on his face. He'd been watching over Samuel Locke's interests for months, investigating the old man's mysterious death, and in that time he'd read every letter Sarah had sent her uncle. He'd seen her handwriting, her humor, her intelligence, her compassion. He'd fallen for her before she ever set foot in the territory. "Samuel made me promise to protect her," Adam said finally. "Whatever it takes. Even if it means going up against Blackstone?" "Especially if it means going up against Blackstone." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Then we'd better have a plan, because that man doesn't play fair, and he's not going to let a Philadelphia teacher stand in the way of what he wants." What neither of them knew yet was that Sarah Locke wasn't just any Philadelphia teacher. She was about to prove she could fight just as dirty as any frontier villain, and she'd do it with a smile that would make strong men weak at the knees. The game was just beginning, and Sarah didn't even know she was playing yet. Morning arrived with golden sunlight and the aroma of coffee and bacon. Sarah woke feeling more refreshed than she'd expected after yesterday's ordeal. She dressed in a practical blue cotton dress and arranged her hair in a simple knot. Downstairs she found 4 other boarders at breakfast: 2 railroad surveyors, a young woman who worked at the general store, and a middle-aged woman introduced as the town schoolteacher. "Miss Locke will be taking over Samuel's property," Mrs. Cooper explained as she served Sarah eggs, bacon, and biscuits. The schoolteacher, Mrs. Hollister, raised her eyebrows. "That's quite an undertaking for a young woman alone." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Sarah replied evenly. "Oh, it's not the work I'm thinking of. It's the location, with Blackstone buying up everything around it now." "Harriet," Mrs. Cooper interrupted firmly, "let Miss Locke enjoy her breakfast." After the meal, Sarah met Mrs. Cooper's son, Thomas, who was preparing to retrieve her trunk from the station. With nothing else to do until her belongings arrived, Sarah decided to explore Kennewick. The main street was busier than she'd expected. Wooden sidewalks fronted a variety of businesses: the general store, a millinery, a bank, the hotel, and the 2 saloons Adam had mentioned. People nodded politely as she passed, several offering curious glances that suggested news of her arrival had spread. Sarah entered the general store, thinking to purchase a few necessities. The bell jingled cheerfully, and she was immediately greeted by the proprietor. "You must be Miss Locke," he said, extending his hand. "Walter Green. This is my establishment." "Word travels fast in Kennewick," Sarah remarked. Mr. Green chuckled. "No secrets in a town this size, especially when it involves Samuel Locke's niece arriving in the company of Adam Archer after some trouble at the stagecoach station." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I see the details have spread as well." "Only that there was trouble, and Archer stepped in. The specifics remain a mystery, which means folks are filling in the blanks with all manner of speculation." His eyes twinkled. "You might want to set the record straight before someone decides you 2 fought off a band of renegade Indians." Despite her embarrassment, Sarah had to laugh. "Nothing so dramatic, I assure you." As she made her purchases, the store's door opened and a tall, imposing man in an expensive suit entered. The good-natured hum of conversation immediately dampened. Sarah noticed Mr. Green's friendly expression turn guarded. "Miss Locke," he said quietly, "may I introduce Mr. Victor Blackstone?" Sarah felt a chill run through her. This was the man Adam had mentioned, the one whose men had attacked her. Blackstone was perhaps 50, with silver-streaked dark hair and cold gray eyes that assessed her with undisguised interest. He removed his hat, revealing sharply chiseled features that might have been handsome if not for the calculating hardness in his expression. "Miss Locke," he said smoothly. "What a pleasure to meet Samuel's niece at last. I had business dealings with your uncle." Sarah hesitated only momentarily before taking his offered hand. "Mr. Blackstone, I understand you've been acquiring property in the area." A flicker of surprise crossed his face at her directness. "Indeed, I have a vision for the Washington territory that requires consolidation of resources." He studied her face. "I was sorry to hear of your uncle's passing." "My uncle was a principled man," Sarah replied coolly. "Principles are admirable, but they don't always account for reality." Blackstone's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The frontier is changing, Miss Locke. The future belongs to those who adapt. I look forward to being part of that future, Mr. Blackstone." His smile thinned. "I'd be most interested in discussing your plans for your uncle's property, perhaps over dinner at the hotel this evening." Before Sarah could respond, the store's door opened again, and Adam Archer stepped inside. He stopped short at the sight of Blackstone, his expression hardening immediately. "Archer," Blackstone acknowledged with a slight nod. "I was just inviting Miss Locke to dinner to discuss business matters." Adam moved to stand beside Sarah, not quite touching her, but close enough that she could sense his protective stance. "Miss Locke already has plans this evening. Sheriff Daniels needs to take her statement about yesterday's incident." Blackstone's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Incident?" "Your men," Adam said bluntly, "at the stagecoach station." A flash of something, anger, concern, crossed Blackstone's face before his smooth mask slipped back into place. "I employ many men, Archer. I can hardly be held responsible for their every action when off duty." "They were wearing your brand," Adam countered. Blackstone waved a dismissive hand. "A regrettable misunderstanding, I'm sure." He turned back to Sarah. "My apologies if you were inconvenienced, Miss Locke. All the more reason for us to start fresh, perhaps tomorrow evening instead." Sarah drew herself up to her full height. "Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Blackstone, but I'll be quite busy settling into my uncle's property. Perhaps another time." Blackstone's smile became even thinner. "As you wish, but my offer to discuss the property remains open. I think you'll find my terms most generous." He replaced his hat and nodded to them both. "Good day." After he left, the atmosphere in the store lightened. Mr. Green let out a low whistle. "Well handled, Miss Locke. Not many stand up to Blackstone like that." "He doesn't intimidate me," Sarah said, though in truth something about the man had unsettled her deeply. Adam's expression was grim. "He should. Blackstone doesn't take rejection well, especially not in public." He turned to her. "I came to tell you that your trunk arrived safely at Mrs. Cooper's. I thought perhaps you'd like to see your uncle's property this afternoon, if you're feeling up to it." "I'd appreciate that very much, Mr. Archer." "Good. I'll come by around 2 with a buggy." He hesitated. "And, Miss Locke, it might be wise not to wander too far alone, at least until you're more familiar with Kennewick and its politics." Sarah recognized it as sensible caution rather than condescension. "I'll bear that in mind. Thank you." With a nod, Adam departed, leaving Sarah to finish her shopping. As she selected items, she couldn't help but wonder what she'd gotten herself into. Uncle Samuel's letters had never mentioned any conflict with Blackstone. Had he been trying to shield her? Or had the situation deteriorated after his death? What Sarah didn't know, what nobody had told her yet, was that Samuel Locke hadn't died of natural causes at all. He'd been murdered, slowly poisoned over weeks until his heart gave out. And the doctor who signed the death certificate, he was on Blackstone's payroll. Adam knew, Sheriff Daniels knew, but they had no proof, nothing that would hold up in court. The only evidence had been buried with Samuel Locke, and the only witness had disappeared 3 days after the funeral. Until now, because that witness had just ridden back into town, carrying a ledger book that would blow Blackstone's empire apart. But he wouldn't surface for another 3 weeks, which meant Sarah would have to survive that long first. And Blackstone was already planning his next move. At precisely 2 o'clock, Adam arrived at Mrs. Cooper's in a well-maintained buggy. Sarah was ready, dressed in a practical riding outfit of dark green. She'd added a small hat with a modest veil for sun protection. Mrs. Cooper pressed a basket into her hands. "Some bread and preserves. The house has been empty since Samuel passed, so there won't be much in the way of provisions." Adam helped Sarah into the buggy, his strong hands steadying her. Once she was settled, he took his place beside her and set the horse in motion. "Your trunk arrived without incident?" he asked. "Yes, thank you for arranging that." Sarah adjusted her gloves. "And thank you for intervening at the store this morning. Mr. Blackstone is not what I expected." "Few are prepared for Blackstone their first time meeting him," Adam replied grimly. "He came to the territory about 3 years ago, with money from back east and grand plans. At first, most folks welcomed him. He brought investment, jobs, promises of railroad connections." "But," Sarah prompted. "But his methods grew increasingly aggressive. He started buying land at fair prices. Then, when people realized how much he wanted it, they began refusing to sell. That's when the accidents started happening." "Accidents?" Sarah frowned. "Barn fires, livestock dying mysteriously, water sources contaminated." Adam's jaw tightened. Nothing that could be directly traced to him. "That's despicable," Sarah said, anger flaring. "Why hasn't anyone stopped him?" "No proof, and until recently, we didn't have a proper sheriff. Just a town marshal who was more interested in breaking up saloon fights than investigating Blackstone." They fell silent as the buggy crested a hill, and suddenly the landscape opened before them. Rolling hills covered with golden grass, stands of pine in the distance, and the blue ribbon of the Columbia River winding through the valley. "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed. Adam smiled. "This is why people come west, Miss Locke. Space, freedom, possibility." He pointed to their left. "My land starts at that fence line and extends about 2 miles that way." "What do you raise?" "Horses primarily, some cattle." Pride entered his voice. "I've been building up a breeding program for quality stock. It's starting to gain recognition." "That's impressive. Did you establish the ranch yourself?" Adam nodded. 5 years ago. Came west with nothing but determination and the knowledge I'd gained working on other people's ranches since I was 14. He glanced at her. "Your uncle was one of the few who encouraged me. Most thought I'd fail within a year." This glimpse into Adam's past intrigued Sarah, but before she could ask more, he gestured ahead. "There it is, Willow Creek Ranch." Sarah followed his gaze to a modest but well-built house nestled among cottonwood trees. A small barn and corral stood nearby, and a creek wound through the pasture beyond. As they approached, Sarah's eyes filled unexpectedly with tears. This had been Uncle Samuel's home, the place from which he'd written those warm, encouraging letters. Now it was hers. Adam slowed the buggy, seeming to sense her emotional response. "Your uncle was proud of this place, built most of it himself." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Adam jumped down and opened the gate. then drove through and up to the house. When he helped her down, his hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she murmured, acutely aware of his closeness. Adam cleared his throat and stepped back. "Let's see if the key works." Sarah retrieved the key from her reticule, sent to her along with Uncle Samuel's will, and approached the front door. It turned easily in the lock, and the door swung open with only a slight creak. Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. A main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area to one side, and doors leading to what appeared to be bedrooms. Everything was neat and covered with a fine layer of dust. "It's perfect," Sarah said softly. Adam moved past her to open windows, letting in fresh air. "It needs some work." Samuel had plans to expand the kitchen and add another bedroom, but his health started failing last winter. "I didn't know he was ill," Sarah said, running a hand along the solid wooden table. "His letters never mentioned it. That was Samuel. Never wanted to worry anyone." Adam's expression softened. "He talked about you often, though. Was real proud when you became a teacher." This touched Sarah deeply. "He encouraged me when my parents thought it improper for a young woman to pursue education beyond what was needed to secure a husband." Adam's mouth quirked into a half-smile. "Samuel had unconventional ideas about women's capabilities. Said his niece had more sense and determination than most men he knew." They continued exploring. The back door opened onto a small garden, now overgrown, but still showing the neat rows Uncle Samuel had planted. Beyond the garden lay the barn and corral. Inside the barn, they found tack hanging neatly on pegs and stalls that had been mucked out and filled with fresh straw. "I've been checking on things," Adam explained, feeding the chickens, making sure the place didn't fall apart. Sarah turned to him, deeply moved. "That was incredibly thoughtful, Mr. Archer." "Adam," he said suddenly, "I think under the circumstances you might call me Adam." His blue eyes held hers, and Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach. "Then you must call me Sarah." A moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken possibilities. Then Adam cleared his throat. "Samuel kept a good riding horse and a plow horse. After he passed, I moved them to my place for proper care. I can bring them back whenever you're ready." The practicality brought Sarah back to reality. There was so much to consider: livestock, crops, maintaining the property. Could she truly manage all this alone? "It's a lot to take in," Adam said, reading her thoughts. "But you don't have to decide everything today, and you won't be without help." They returned to the house, and Sarah unpacked Mrs. Cooper's basket in the kitchen. Adam built a small fire in the fireplace, and they shared a simple meal of bread, preserves, and coffee. As they sat at the kitchen table, late afternoon light casting long shadows, Sarah found herself relaxing in Adam's company. He was easy to talk to, knowledgeable without being condescending. "The land extends about a mile in that direction," he explained, pointing west. "It includes good water access and excellent grazing land. Samuel ran about 30 head of cattle and grew enough crops to be mostly self-sufficient." "That sounds manageable," Sarah said, trying to sound confident. Adam hesitated. "There's another option. If you're not set on ranching yourself, you could lease the grazing land to neighboring ranchers, like me, for instance. It would provide steady income while you decide what direction you want to take." "That's not a bad idea," Sarah said thoughtfully. "I have much to learn before I could run a successful operation." "You'd learn quickly," Adam said with unexpected conviction. "Samuel always said you had a quick mind." "Nevertheless, I'm not too proud to acknowledge my limitations." Sarah set down her coffee cup. "I'd be interested in discussing lease terms if you're serious about the offer." "I am." Adam looked pleased. "We can work out details later. For now, let's finish showing you the property boundaries." They spent another hour walking the perimeter, Adam pointing out landmarks and explaining seasonal patterns. By the time they returned to the buggy, the sun was beginning to set. "We should head back," Adam said. "Mrs. Cooper worries if her boarders aren't in by dark." As they drove toward town, Sarah found herself reluctant for the day to end. Despite complications with Blackstone and the daunting prospect of managing the ranch, she felt more at peace than she had in months. "Adam," she said as the lights of town came into view, "thank you for today, for everything." He glanced at her, his expression soft in the fading light. "You're welcome, Sarah. I meant what I said yesterday. You're not alone here." The way he said her name made her heartbeat quicken. She knew it was too soon to be feeling such attraction, yet the connection between them was undeniable. What Sarah didn't know was that as they rode back to town, satisfied with their growing bond, Blackstone was in his study 20 miles away, finalizing plans that would test that bond to its breaking point. "Burn it," he told Hank Leary, his most brutal enforcer. "The house, the barn, everything. Make it look like an accident, but make sure she gets the message. Sell, or worse things will happen." Leary grinned, revealing blackened teeth. "When?" "Tonight. She's in town. It'll be empty." What Blackstone didn't count on was Adam Archer's paranoia, or the fact that Adam had been sleeping in Sarah's barn every night since her arrival, watching, waiting, knowing Blackstone would make a move soon. The trap was set, and tonight everything would change. As Adam pulled up to Mrs. Cooper's, he helped Sarah down from the buggy. "Sheriff Daniels would like to see you tomorrow morning about your statement. I can escort you to his office at 9 if that suits you." "That would be fine," Sarah agreed. For a moment they stood facing each other in the gathering dusk, neither quite ready to say goodnight. Then Mrs. Cooper opened the front door. "There you are. I was beginning to worry. Dinner's nearly ready." The spell broken, Sarah took a step back. "Good night, Adam. Thank you again." "Good night, Sarah. Until tomorrow." As she watched him drive away, Sarah felt both loss and anticipation. Whatever was developing between them seemed both inevitable and right. What she didn't know was that Adam wasn't going home. He was circling back to Willow Creek, rifle loaded, ready for the confrontation he knew was coming. Because Adam Archer had a secret. He'd been a Pinkerton detective before coming west. He'd been hired by the territorial governor to investigate land fraud and had been tracking Blackstone's criminal enterprise for 2 years. Samuel Locke had been his key witness. And when Samuel died, Adam had sworn to protect Sarah, not just because of his promise to her uncle, but because she was now the bait that would finally bring Blackstone down. The question was, could he keep her safe while using her as bait? Or would his growing feelings for her compromise the entire operation? Tonight would answer that question. Because Hank Leary and his men were already riding toward Willow Creek with torches and kerosene. And Adam was waiting in the darkness, finger on the trigger, ready to make a choice between justice and love. The moon was high when Adam settled into position in the barn loft at Willow Creek. He'd been right. His instincts had been screaming all day that Blackstone would move fast before Sarah could establish herself in the community. Around midnight he heard them coming. 3 riders, moving quietly but not quietly enough for someone trained to listen. Adam watched through a crack in the barn wall as they dismounted near the house. Hank Leary was easy to identify, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences for his brutality. The other 2 were younger, nervous. "You 2 splash the kerosene around the house," Leary ordered in a low voice. "I'll handle the barn. Make it look like a lantern accident." Adam's jaw tightened. He could shoot Leary right now, end this before it started. But that wouldn't give him the evidence he needed to bring down Blackstone. He needed them to commit the crime, needed them to think they'd succeeded. So he waited, watched as they doused the house with kerosene, watched as Leary approached the barn with his own can. That's when Adam made his move. He dropped from the loft silently, landing behind Leary just as the man reached for a match. Adam pressed his rifle barrel against Leary's spine. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Leary froze. "Archer, drop the kerosene, slowly." Leary complied, but Adam could see his mind working, calculating odds. "Your boy's by the house," Adam called out loudly. "I've got a rifle on Leary. You light that fire, and he's the first to die. Then you." The two younger men appeared from behind the house, hands raised. They'd clearly not signed up for a gunfight. "Smart choice," Adam said. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Sheriff Daniels everything, who hired you, how much you were paid, every detail. In exchange, I'll recommend leniency." "Like hell," Leary growled. Adam jabbed the rifle harder into his back. "You're right. You won't talk, but they will." He nodded toward the other two. "And you'll hang alone while they walk free." One of the younger men cracked immediately. "Blackstone hired us, paid $50 each to burn the place down, said make it look like an accident." "Shut up," Leary snarled, but it was too late. "We have a written contract," the other young man added desperately. "Blackstone insisted on it, said he needed proof we'd done the job to get paid. It's in Leary's saddlebag." Adam smiled grimly. This was even better than he'd hoped. "Get it." 5 minutes later, Adam had all three men tied up in the barn and a signed contract from Victor Blackstone authorizing the removal of structures on the Willow Creek property. Veiled language, but damning when combined with testimony about kerosene and torches. But as Adam was securing the last rope, Leary's expression changed to something ugly and satisfied. "You think this changes anything?" he said. "You think Blackstone cares about us? By morning, there'll be 3 new bodies in the river, and this contract will disappear. Blackstone's got the judge in his pocket, the marshal, half the businessmen in 3 counties. Adam's blood ran cold. Because Leary was right, or at least he'd been right until recently. Blackstone's corruption ran deep. "Not anymore," Adam said quietly. "Things have changed, Leary." "What things?" "The territorial governor sent a new judge to Kennewick last month. Elias Wilson. Clean as they come. And Sheriff Daniels? He's not like the old marshal. He can't be bought." Leary's confidence faltered slightly. "Even so, 1 fire at a house, 3 drifters' testimony against the richest man in the territory. Blackstone will walk." "Maybe," Adam acknowledged. "Unless we had something more, something bigger." That's when Leary's expression changed completely, to fear. "You're Pinkerton." Adam didn't confirm or deny. He just smiled. "How long you been watching Blackstone?" "Long enough." "Samuel Locke was helping me build a case, yes." Leary's face went pale. "Then you know, about the poison, about the doctor." Adam's finger tightened on the trigger. It took every ounce of his self-control not to end Leary right there. "I know Samuel Locke was murdered. I know you administered the poison. I know Dr. Morrison falsified the death certificate. Then you know we're all dead men if we talk. Blackstone doesn't leave witnesses." "He does if they're in protective custody. Federal protective custody." Leary stared at him. "You're offering a deal. Full confession about Samuel Locke's murder, about tonight, about every crime Blackstone ordered you to commit. In exchange, you don't hang. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison, but you'll be alive." The two younger men were nodding frantically, but Leary was harder to crack. He'd built his reputation on loyalty to Blackstone, on being the enforcer who never talked. "What about her?" Leary asked. "The niece, Sarah Locke. You tell her yet that you're using her as bait? Adam's jaw tightened. That was the question he'd been avoiding. Didn't think so, Leary said with satisfaction. She thinks you're just a noble cowboy who saved her life. She doesn't know you were planning this for months, that you let those men attack her at the station because you needed her scared enough to trust you. That's not, isn't it? Leary's grin was vicious. You watched Samuel die. You knew Sarah was coming. You knew Blackstone would go after her, and you used it all to build your case. How's she gonna feel when she finds out the truth? Adam had no answer, because Leary was right. Adam had used Sarah, even if his feelings for her had become genuine. He'd put her in danger deliberately, using her as the catalyst to force Blackstone into making mistakes. Take them to town, Adam said roughly to the shadows behind Leary. That's when Sheriff Daniels and 2 deputies emerged from where they'd been hiding, having arrived an hour earlier at Adam's signal. We got it all, Daniels said grimly. Every word. Between this and the contract, we can hold them until the federal marshal arrives. As the prisoners were loaded onto horses, Daniels pulled Adam aside. You going to tell her? Eventually. Eventually might be too late. She deserves to know the truth, Adam, before she falls any deeper for you. Adam watched the prisoners ride away toward town. I know. But knowing didn't make it easier, because Sarah Locke had already started to become the most important thing in his world, and he'd lied to her from the moment they met. The question was, would she forgive him when she learned the truth, or would she hate him for it? He'd know soon enough, because Blackstone's next move wouldn't be against property. It would be against Sarah herself. And when that happened, Adam would have to reveal everything. The following morning, Sarah woke to sunshine and birdsong, unaware that during the night her property had almost burned to the ground. She dressed carefully for her meeting with Sheriff Daniels, choosing a proper navy dress with white trim. Adam arrived precisely at 9 to escort her. He seemed tense, she thought, though he smiled warmly when he saw her. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. They walked to the sheriff's office in companionable silence. Sarah noticed Adam kept scanning the street, his hand never far from the gun at his hip. Is something wrong? She asked. Just being cautious. Sheriff Daniels greeted them at his office. He was a serious man with kind eyes, and he put Sarah at ease as he asked her to recount the attack at the stagecoach station. Sarah described everything, the 3 men, their threats, her fear, Adam's timely arrival. The sheriff took notes carefully. And you believe these men worked for Victor Blackstone? He asked. Mr. Archer said they wore his brand. Daniels glanced at Adam, some unspoken communication passing between them. We made some arrests last night, Miss Locke. The men who attacked you have been identified and will face charges. That's good news, Sarah said, relieved. There's more. Daniels hesitated. We also arrested 3 men for attempted arson at your property last night. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. What? They were caught in the act of trying to burn down your house. Mr. Archer intercepted them. Sarah turned to Adam, shock and confusion warring on her face. You were at Willow Creek last night? I had a feeling Blackstone might try something, Adam said carefully. I've been keeping watch. Keeping watch? Sarah's voice was faint. You mean you've been staying there without telling me? Sarah, and these men, they have confessed? She asked the sheriff, cutting Adam off. They have. They've also provided testimony about other crimes, including... Daniels paused, clearly uncomfortable. Including the murder of your uncle, Samuel Locke. The room spun. Sarah gripped the edge of the desk. Murder? But the doctor said it was his heart. The doctor lied, Daniels said gently. Your uncle was poisoned over a period of weeks. Dr. Morrison was paid by Blackstone to falsify the cause of death. Sarah couldn't breathe. Uncle Samuel, her kind, generous uncle, had been murdered for his land, for coal deposits she hadn't even known existed. "I think I need some air," she whispered. Adam reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "Don't. Sarah, please." "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice steadier now, colder. "About my uncle's murder. How long?" Adam's silence was answer enough. "Since before I arrived," Sarah said. Not a question, but a statement. You knew everything." "Let me explain. Were you even passing by the stagecoach station by accident? Or did you know I'd be attacked?" Adam's jaw tightened. "I knew Blackstone would make a move. I was watching." "You were watching," Sarah repeated, her voice rising. "You watched 3 men attack me, and you waited. How long did you wait, Adam? How long did you watch me fight for my life before you decided to intervene?" "It wasn't like that. Then what was it like?" Sarah's eyes blazed. "Tell me the truth, all of it. Right now." Adam looked at Sheriff Daniels, who nodded grimly. Taking a deep breath, Adam began. "My name is Adam Archer, but I'm also a Pinkerton detective, hired by the territorial governor 2 years ago to investigate land fraud. Blackstone has been running a criminal enterprise, buying land through intimidation, bribery, and murder. Your uncle was helping me build a case against him." Sarah felt like she'd been punched. "Uncle Samuel knew you were an investigator." "Yes, he'd been documenting Blackstone's crimes for months before his death. When he died, when he was murdered, I swore I'd finish what he started." "And I was what? Convenient bait?" "No, don't lie to me again." Sarah's voice was ice. "You knew I was coming to claim the property. You knew Blackstone would target me. You used me. I was protecting you by watching men attack me, by letting me think my uncle died naturally, by pretending to be just a helpful neighbor." Sarah's voice cracked. "I trusted you, Adam. I was falling." She stopped herself. "It doesn't matter now. Sarah, please listen." "No." She stood, her entire body rigid with fury and hurt. "I've heard enough lies. Sheriff Daniels, thank you for your time. I'll be available if you need further testimony." "Miss Locke," the sheriff began, "I'd like to leave now. Alone." Adam stepped into her path. "Sarah, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But you're still in danger. Blackstone, then arrest him. That's what you've been working toward, isn't it? Arrest him and leave me alone." "We can't arrest him yet. We need more evidence." "Then I suggest you find it, without using me." Sarah pushed past him and walked out of the office, her head high despite the tears threatening to spill. Behind her, she heard Adam call her name, but she didn't stop. She walked blindly through town, not caring where she was going, just needing to get away. Everything she'd felt over the past few days, the attraction, the growing love, the sense of finding where she belonged, it had all been a lie. Adam hadn't saved her out of chivalry. He'd been using her from the beginning, and she'd been fool enough to fall for it. Sarah found herself at the church and slipped inside. The cool, quiet space offered temporary refuge. She sank into a pew and finally let the tears come. She cried for Uncle Samuel, murdered for trying to do the right thing. She cried for herself, for her naivety in thinking she'd found something real with Adam. And she cried for the future she'd imagined, now shattered beyond repair. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, Victor Blackstone was learning about the arrests. And his response wasn't fear or caution, it was rage. "She's the key to everything," he told his lawyer. "Locke's niece. If she's gone, the property reverts to distant relatives who will gladly sell, and Archer's case falls apart without her testimony." "You're talking about murder," the lawyer said nervously. "Federal investigators are already involved. Then we make it look like an accident. A grieving woman, overwhelmed by revelations about her uncle's death, takes her own life. It happens all the time. The lawyer paled. That's what you're going to help me arrange, tonight. Because if this doesn't happen, we both hang. Blackstone's network was vast. Despite the arrests, he still had men loyal to him, still had reach. And Sarah Locke, sitting alone in that church, had no idea that her life expectancy had just been measured in hours. But Adam knew, because one of Blackstone's men, the bartender at the Silver Dollar Saloon, was actually another Pinkerton agent. And he'd just sent word about Blackstone's plan. Adam stood outside the church, torn between respecting Sarah's anger and his duty to protect her. Sheriff Daniels joined him. "She won't want to see you," the sheriff said. "I know, but she needs to hear what we just learned." Adam's expression hardened. "Then I'll tell her, even if she hates me for it." He pushed open the church door and found Sarah in a pew near the front, her shoulders shaking. The sight of her crying because of his deception was like a knife to his chest. "Sarah." She stiffened but didn't turn around. "I asked to be alone. Blackstone is planning to kill you tonight. We just got word from an agent inside his organization." That got her attention. She turned, her face streaked with tears. "An agent? We have people everywhere, Sarah. This investigation is bigger than just me. But right now, you're the target. Blackstone thinks if you're gone, his problems disappear. Then arrest him." "We can't. Not yet. Not without more evidence." Adam moved closer, keeping his voice low. "I know you hate me right now. I know I've lost any chance with you. But please, Sarah, let me keep you safe. That's all I'm asking." Sarah stared at him, emotions warring on her face. "Why should I trust anything you say?" "Because despite everything I've done, despite all the lies, there's one truth that's never been false. I care about you, deeply, and I will not let Blackstone hurt you. Your caring doesn't feel very comforting right now." "I know." Adam's voice was rough with emotion. "But it's all I have to offer. That and my promise to keep you alive, no matter what it costs me." Sarah looked away, thinking. Every instinct told her to refuse, to handle this herself, to trust no one. But she wasn't stupid. Blackstone had killed her uncle. He'd tried to burn her house, and now he wanted her dead. She needed help, even if it came from a man who'd betrayed her trust. "What do you want me to do?" she asked finally. Relief flooded Adam's face. "Come with me. Now. There's a safe house outside town. You'll stay there until we can move against Blackstone. And if your evidence never materializes, am I supposed to hide forever?" "It will. We're close, Sarah. So close. Jenkins, the bookkeeper, has ledgers documenting years of Blackstone's crimes. Combined with the testimony from last night's arrests, we almost have enough. We just need one more piece. Proof that Blackstone personally ordered Samuel's murder." "And how do you plan to get that proof?" Adam hesitated. "By making Blackstone think his plan worked." Sarah's eyes widened. "You want to fake my death?" "It's the only way. If Blackstone believes you're gone, he'll let his guard down. He might even brag about it to someone we can use against him." "That's insane." "It's the only option that keeps you alive while we finish building our case." Sarah wanted to refuse, wanted to tell Adam to go to hell and handle everything herself. But she thought of Uncle Samuel, dead because he'd tried to fight Blackstone alone. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I want two things in return." "Name them." "First, when this is over, you tell me everything. Every detail of this investigation, every lie you told, every manipulation. I want the complete truth." "Done." "Second, when Blackstone is convicted, you leave Kennewick. I don't want to see you again." That hit Adam like a physical blow, but he nodded. If that's what you want. It is. Then we have a deal. Adam extended his hand. Sarah looked at it for a long moment before taking it. His grip was warm and firm, and despite everything, she felt that same electric connection that had drawn her to him from the beginning. She hated that she could still feel anything for him at all. "We leave in an hour," Adam said. "Pack only essentials. And Sarah, tell no one. Not Mrs. Cooper, not anyone. As far as the world is concerned, you're simply having a difficult day after learning about your uncle's murder." Sarah nodded. As she walked past him toward the church door, Adam caught her arm gently. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "everything I felt for you was real. The investigation was a job. But you were never just part of the case. You were never just bait. I need you to know that." Sarah pulled her arm free. "What I know, Mr. Archer, is that you're very good at saying what people want to hear. I won't make the mistake of believing you again." She walked out, leaving Adam alone in the church with the weight of his choices crushing down on him. He'd done his job. He'd protected the witness. He'd moved the investigation forward. But he'd lost the woman he loved. And for the first time in his career, Adam Archer wondered if the cost had been too high. The safe house was a small cabin 15 miles outside Kennewick, hidden in a grove of pines with sight lines in all directions. When Adam and Sarah arrived, separately, taking different routes to avoid being followed, they found Sheriff Daniels already there with 2 deputies. "This is it?" Sarah asked, looking at the rustic structure. "Not much to look at," Daniels admitted. "But it's secure. My men will maintain a watch around the clock." Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished. A rope bed, a table, 2 chairs, a small stove. Supplies had been stocked: food, water, ammunition. "How long will I be here?" Sarah asked. 3 days, Adam replied. "Maybe 4. That's how long we estimate it will take to get the final evidence we need." "And then?" "Then we arrest Blackstone, and you testify at his trial." Sarah nodded, setting down her small bag. She'd packed as Adam instructed, only essentials. 1 change of clothes, her uncle's letters, the deed to Willow Creek. "I'll be in the next room," Adam said. "If you need anything, I won't." Adam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. As he turned to leave, Sarah spoke again. "Adam." He stopped. "Thank you for keeping me alive. I may not trust you, but I'm not ungrateful." It was a small olive branch, and Adam recognized it as such. "You're welcome." That night, Sarah lay awake on the uncomfortable bed, listening to the wind in the pines. She thought about Uncle Samuel, about Adam, about everything that had happened since she'd arrived in Kennewick. In the next room, Adam sat at the small table, writing a report for his superiors. But his mind kept wandering to the woman lying just feet away, so close and yet completely beyond his reach. Neither of them slept much. The next morning, Kennewick woke to shocking news. Sarah Locke had been found dead in her room at Mrs. Cooper's boarding house. Dr. Morrison, the same corrupt doctor who'd falsified Samuel Locke's death certificate, pronounced it an overdose of laudanum. A suicide, clearly, brought on by the stress of learning about her uncle's murder. The town was scandalized. Some whispered that the poor girl had never been suited for frontier life. Others muttered darkly about the timing, about Blackstone, about coincidences that weren't coincidental at all. Victor Blackstone heard the news over breakfast and smiled into his coffee. Problem solved. The Locke property would go to auction, he'd buy it for a song, and the territorial investigation would collapse without their star witness. He felt so confident that he did exactly what Adam had predicted. He bragged. That afternoon, Blackstone met with his lawyer at the Silver Dollar Saloon. They took a private room upstairs, thinking they were alone. They weren't. Behind the wall, In a carefully constructed listening post, Adam Archer and Deputy Marshal James Harrison sat with recording equipment that had just been delivered from San Francisco. "It's done," Blackstone said, pouring whiskey. "The lock girl is dead, and we're in the clear." "You're certain it can't be traced to you?" the lawyer asked nervously. "Morrison handled it perfectly, made it look like suicide. Even left a note, the girl's own handwriting, lifted from a letter. She was distraught, overwhelmed, couldn't bear the truth about her uncle. Very tragic." "And Archer? What about him? Without Sarah Locke's testimony, his case is circumstantial at best." "We'll be fine." The lawyer didn't look convinced. "What about Jenkins, the bookkeeper? He could still testify." Blackstone's smile turned cold. "Jenkins has family, a wife, 3 children. He'll keep his mouth shut if he knows what's good for them." "You're threatening to kill children." "I'm threatening to do whatever necessary to protect our interests." "Don't go soft on me now, Marcus. We're too close." In the listening post, Adam's hands clenched into fists. He looked at Harrison, who nodded grimly. They'd heard enough. Between Blackstone's confession to arranging Sarah's suicide and his threat against Jenkins's family, they had everything they needed. "Let's finish this," Adam said. Within the hour, Blackstone was under arrest. He'd been caught off guard, still celebrating in the saloon, and hadn't resisted. But his expression when he saw Adam was venomous. "You," he spat. "You set this up. Sarah Locke isn't really dead, is she?" Adam smiled coldly. "You just confessed to murdering her. That's what the jury will hear." "It won't stick. You think people in this territory will convict me? I own half of them." "You owned half of them," Sheriff Daniels corrected. "Past tense. Turns out most folks don't like being blackmailed and threatened. They've been coming forward all day, ready to testify once we had you in custody." Blackstone's confidence finally cracked. He looked around at the growing crowd, townspeople, ranchers, businessmen, people he'd thought were under his control, and he saw in their faces not fear, but satisfaction. He'd lost. Completely. As Blackstone was led away in chains, Adam rode out to the safe house to tell Sarah the news. He found her on the porch, having been informed by the deputies that the operation was complete. "It's over," Adam said, dismounting. "Blackstone confessed to everything. He's going to hang." Sarah nodded slowly. "Good." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Adam said, "You're free to go home now. To Willow Creek. The property is yours, clear and uncontested." "And you?" "I have to stay until the trial. Make sure everything is documented properly. But after that..." He paused. "After that, I'll keep my promise. I'll leave Kennewick." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since learning the truth. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the guilt, the genuine regret. She saw a man who'd done terrible things for what he believed was the right reason. She saw someone not unlike herself, trying to survive in a world that didn't play fair. "Adam," she said quietly, "I need time. Time to process everything, to decide what I want. But, but maybe you don't have to leave. Not right away. Not until we've talked. Really talked." Hope flickered in Adam's eyes. "I can do that." "I'm not promising forgiveness," Sarah warned. "I'm not even promising I'll ever trust you again. But I'm willing to listen, to understand why you did what you did. That's more than I deserve." "Probably. But Uncle Samuel trusted you, and despite everything, I think he was a good judge of character." Adam swallowed hard. "He was, and he loved you very much, Sarah. Everything in his letters, everything he told me about you, it was all true. You were as strong and smart and remarkable as he said." "Stop," Sarah said, but her voice was softer now. No more pretty words. Not yet. Just give me time. All the time you need. Sarah walked back into the cabin to gather her things. As she did, she allowed herself a small smile. She'd come west seeking independence, seeking a fresh start. She'd found both, along with danger, betrayal, and a complicated man who'd turned her world upside down. But she'd also discovered something else, her own strength. She'd survived an attack, survived discovering her uncle's murder, survived being used as bait in a federal investigation. She'd survived it all, and she would continue to survive, with or without Adam Archer. But maybe, just maybe, it would be nice to have him around. Eventually, after a lot of talking, and probably some more anger, and definitely more honesty. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since arriving in Kennewick, Sarah felt ready to face it on her own terms. The trial of Victor Blackstone began 3 weeks later and lasted only 4 days. The evidence was overwhelming. Jenkins's ledgers, testimony from Leary and the other arrested men, the recorded confession from the Silver Dollar Saloon, and statements from dozens of citizens who'd been intimidated and threatened over the years. Sarah testified on the 3rd day. She spoke clearly and calmly about the attack at the stagecoach station, about Blackstone's thinly veiled threats, about the attempted arson at Willow Creek. When asked about her uncle, her voice wavered only slightly. Samuel Locke was a good man who stood up for what was right, she said. He died because he refused to be bullied. I won't dishonor his memory by being silent now. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts, including murder, attempted murder, arson, fraud, and conspiracy. Victor Blackstone was sentenced to hang. As the verdict was read, Blackstone stared at Sarah with pure hatred. "This isn't over," he mouthed. But she held his gaze steadily until he was led away. It was over, finally. In the weeks that followed, Kennewick began to heal. Blackstone's properties were seized and redistributed fairly among those he'd defrauded. Dr. Morrison lost his medical license and left town in disgrace. And slowly the community that Blackstone had corrupted began to remember what it meant to be neighbors rather than rivals. Sarah moved permanently into Willow Creek. With Miguel's help, she began running the ranch in earnest, not just leasing the land, but actively managing cattle, planting crops, making improvements. She attended the Ladies' Aid Society meetings, helped at the schoolhouse, and generally became a fixture in Kennewick life. People admired her resilience, her independence, her refusal to be defeated by tragedy. And Adam? Adam kept his distance, as promised. He stayed to complete his investigation and testify at the trial, but he avoided Sarah except when absolutely necessary. He slept at his own ranch, worked his horses, and tried not to think about the woman he'd lost. But 2 months after the trial, Sarah showed up at Riverbend on a bright autumn morning. Adam was working with a young colt in the corral when he saw her riding up. His heart stuttered in his chest. Sarah dismounted gracefully, tying her horse to the fence. She watched him work for a few minutes, saying nothing. Finally, Adam approached, wiping his hands on his pants. "Sarah." "Adam. Is something wrong? Is there trouble?" "No trouble. I just—" She took a breath. "I've been thinking about everything that happened, about what you did and why you did it." Adam waited, barely breathing. "I understand now," Sarah continued. "Why you couldn't tell me the truth at first. Why you had to keep your investigation secret. I don't like it. I'm still angry about parts of it. But I understand." "Sarah, let me finish." She held up a hand. "Uncle Samuel knew the risks. He chose to help you anyway, because he believed in stopping men like Blackstone. And in a way, so did I. The moment I decided to stay and fight rather than sell and run, I made the same choice he did. You didn't know what you were choosing. No, but maybe if I had known, I would have made the same choice anyway. Sarah moved closer. I've been independent my whole life, Adam. I've fought my own battles, made my own decisions, and I've been proud of that. As you should be. But Uncle Samuel used to say that true strength isn't refusing help. It's knowing when to accept it. Knowing when to trust someone else to stand beside you rather than behind you. Adam's throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm ready to talk, really talk, about everything. The investigation, the lies, the truth. All of it. She met his eyes. And then, after we've talked, maybe we can figure out what comes next. What do you want to come next? Sarah smiled slightly. I don't know yet. But I'd like the chance to find out, if you're willing. Sarah, I would give anything. No grand gestures, she interrupted. No dramatic promises. Just honesty, just the truth going forward. Can you do that? Adam nodded. Yes, I can do that. Then let's start now. Tell me everything, from the beginning. And I mean everything. So Adam did. They sat on his porch as the sun tracked across the sky, and he told her the entire story. How he'd been recruited as a Pinkerton agent, how the territorial governor had asked him to investigate land fraud, how Samuel Locke had become his key witness. He told her about watching Samuel die, unable to save him, about the promise he'd made, about the months of investigation, the careful gathering of evidence, the frustration of watching Blackstone operate with impunity. And he told her about the moment he'd first seen her at the stagecoach station, how his carefully laid plans had collided with unexpected emotion, how protecting her had shifted from duty to desperate need. I watched those men attack you for 30 seconds before I intervened, Adam admitted, his voice rough. 30 seconds that felt like an eternity. I told myself I needed to let them commit to the attack, needed to establish clear criminal intent. But the truth is, I hesitated because I was terrified. Terrified of what might happen if I waited too long. Terrified that my plan would get you hurt. Sarah absorbed this. But you did intervene. Not soon enough. Adam, if you'd appeared any sooner, those men might have scattered. They might never have been caught, and Blackstone would still be free. She touched his hand briefly. Sometimes the right choice feels wrong. That doesn't make it any less right. They talked for hours, covering everything. The fake death, the recorded confession, the moments of manipulation, and the moments of genuine connection. Adam held nothing back, accepting full responsibility for his choices. And slowly as the sun began to set, Sarah felt the knot of anger and betrayal in her chest begin to loosen. Not disappear, not completely, but loosen enough that she could breathe. I can't promise I'll ever fully trust you again, she said as darkness fell. Trust has to be rebuilt, earned. I know, but I'm willing to try, if you are. I am, more than anything. Sarah stood, preparing to leave. Adam stood as well, walking her to her horse. Sarah, he said as she mounted, can I ask you something? Yes. That day in the church, when I told you how I felt about you, did you believe me? Even a little? Sarah looked down at him, his face illuminated by the last rays of sunset. I wanted to believe you, she said honestly. And maybe part of me did, but I was too hurt to acknowledge it. And now? Now I think you're a good man who made hard choices for the right reasons. I think you cared about my uncle, and you care about justice. And I think... She paused. I think maybe you care about me too, in your own complicated way. I love you, Adam said simply. Nothing complicated about it. I love you, Sarah Locke, and I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you, if you'll let me. Sarah's heart clenched, but she wasn't ready for such declarations, not yet. Ask me again in 6 months, she said softly, After you've shown me who you are without the investigation, without the secrets. Ask me then. I will, Adam promised. As Sarah rode home to Willow Creek, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. Adam Archer had lied to her, manipulated her, used her as bait. But he'd also protected her, avenged her uncle, and given her the truth when she demanded it. He was flawed, but so was she. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. 6 months later, on a warm spring day, Adam Archer showed up at Willow Creek with a bouquet of wildflowers and a nervous expression. Sarah was in the garden, planting tomatoes with Anna Vasquez, who'd become a close friend. When she saw Adam approaching, she smiled despite herself. "Anna, would you excuse us?" Anna grinned knowingly. "Of course, Miss Sarah. I'll just be in the barn if you need me." Adam waited until they were alone. "It's been 6 months. Has it?" Sarah teased, though of course she'd been counting too. "Sarah Locke, I love you. I've loved you since the day I met you, and I'll love you until the day I die. I'm not a perfect man. I've made mistakes, hurt you, lost your trust. But I've spent these 6 months showing you who I am. A rancher, a neighbor, a man trying to build something good in this territory." "You have," Sarah agreed. "You've been patient and honest and—" She smiled. "Rather annoyingly perfect, actually." Adam laughed. "Hardly perfect. No, but real. That's what matters. So I'm asking again, the question I asked 6 months ago. What do you want to come next, Sarah?" Sarah set down her gardening trowel and stood, brushing dirt from her hands. She walked to where Adam stood, close enough to see the hope and fear warring in his blue eyes. "I want you to court me properly," she said. "I want Sunday dinners and dances and long conversations about nothing important. I want to learn who you are when you're not saving lives or catching criminals. I can do that. And then, after a while, a good long while, I want you to ask me to marry you, and I want to say yes." Adam's face lit up like sunrise. "Really? Really? But not yet, Adam. I'm not ready yet. I need more time." He silenced her with a kiss, gentle and sweet and full of promise. When they parted, both were breathless. "I'll wait as long as you need," Adam said. "A year, 2 years, 10 years, however long it takes for you to be ready." "It won't take 10 years," Sarah said, laughing. "Maybe 1, probably 1. 1 year," Adam repeated, as if committing it to memory. "I can do 1 year." They stood together in the garden, the spring sun warm on their faces, and for the first time since arriving in Kennewick, Sarah felt completely at peace. She'd come west seeking independence. She'd found it, along with danger, heartbreak, and unexpected love. She'd lost her uncle but gained a community. She'd been betrayed, but had chosen to forgive. And now, standing in the garden of Willow Creek Ranch, with Adam Archer's arms around her, Sarah knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. 1 year later, almost to the day, Sarah and Adam were married in Kennewick's small white church. The entire town attended, along with ranchers and homesteaders from miles around. Mrs. Cooper cried happy tears. Miguel and his family sat in the front row. Sheriff Daniels served as Adam's best man. Sarah wore a gown of ivory silk, and Adam wore a new suit that made him look uncomfortable but handsome. When they exchanged vows, their voices were strong and certain. "I promise to be honest with you," Adam said, "to trust you with the truth, even when it's difficult, to stand beside you, not in front of you or behind you, but beside you as an equal partner." "I promise to forgive your imperfections," Sarah replied, "as I hope you'll forgive mine. To build a life with you, based on trust and respect. To fight my own battles, but to let you fight beside me when the battle's too big for one person alone." When Reverend Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. Adam kissed his bride thoroughly, to the delight of the crowd. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with music and dancing and enough food to feed the county. As Sarah and Adam moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, they felt the genuine warmth of a community that had become family. Later, as they prepared to leave for Riverbend, which would be their primary home, though they'd keep Willow Creek as well, Mrs. Cooper pulled Sarah aside. "I knew from the beginning," the older woman said, eyes twinkling. "The way he looked at you that first night, I knew you two were meant for each other." "Even when we couldn't stand the sight of each other?" Sarah asked, laughing. "Especially then. The best loves are never easy, dear. They're forged in fire and tested by trial, but they last forever." As Sarah and Adam rode away from town toward their future, the stars bright overhead, Sarah reflected on Mrs. Cooper's words. Their love had indeed been forged in fire, the fire of deception and danger, of loss and betrayal. But they'd emerged stronger, their bond tempered like steel. "What are you thinking?" Adam asked, his arm around her waist as they rode together on his horse. "I'm thinking about that day at the stagecoach station, when you said I'd never have to fight alone again. I remember. You kept that promise, Adam. Even when I was fighting you, you were still beside me, still trying to protect me. I always will be." Sarah leaned back against his chest, feeling his warmth, his strength, his love. "I know, and I'll always be beside you, too. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Adam agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. Over the years that followed, the Archer Ranch, combining Riverbend and Willow Creek, became one of the most prosperous in the territory. The coal deposits Sarah had inherited were carefully developed, providing resources for the community's growth. Adam's horse breeding program gained national recognition. Sarah established a school on their property, ensuring that children throughout the region received quality education. Their family grew, 2 sons and a daughter, all strong and capable, raised with their mother's intelligence and their father's integrity. And through it all, through the challenges and triumphs of building a life in the frontier, Sarah and Adam remained true to the vows they'd made: to stand beside each other, to trust and forgive, to build something lasting. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch of the house at Willow Creek, watching the sunset paint the hills gold, Adam took Sarah's hand. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah thought about the girl she'd been, the Philadelphia teacher who'd come west seeking adventure. She thought about all that had happened, the danger, the deception, the heartbreak, the healing. "Not one," she said honestly. "Would you?" "Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Sarah Archer. Even though I made you work so hard to earn my trust. Especially because of that, you never made anything easy for me. You challenged me, pushed me, made me be better than I was." Sarah smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "Good. Because I plan to keep challenging you for the next 40 years at least. I'm counting on it." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars appeared, Sarah felt the deep contentment of a life well lived and love well earned. She'd come west seeking freedom and found everything she'd never known she wanted: a home, a family, a purpose, and a love that had survived every test. The journey hadn't been easy, but the destination, this moment, this man, this life, was worth every hardship along the way. If you enjoyed Sarah and Adam's story of love, forged through deception and danger in the wild frontier, don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below, telling us your favorite twist. Was it when Sarah discovered Adam was a Pinkerton agent? When they faked her death, or when Blackstone finally confessed? Let us know, and stay tuned for more incredible true tales of courage and romance from the American West.